Federal judge rejects a lawsuit arguing that the DNC discriminated against Florida's voters by stripping the state of its delegates. Lawyers for the Democratic National Committee informed the Rules and Bylaws Committee that it lacks the authority to seat any more than half of the delegates from Michigan and Florida, all of which could be really good news for Senator Clinton. Our fourth story in the countdown, because this could all go all the way to the convention. When the Rules Committee meets on Saturday, the Clinton campaign intends to argue that all delegates should be seated, despite the fact that Senator Obama was not even on the ballot in Michigan. For its part, the Obama campaign says it's willing to compromise on some delegates so the party can finally begin on focusing on beating Senator McCain.
I think the Clinton campaign is out there saying no compromise, only 100%. We're willing to compromise. And I think that's where most of the party is. I think people want some resolution here that can be described as a fair resolution, but that most importantly allows us to move on to the general election, because in both of these states there's both a need and a hunger to focus on November.
The Clinton campaign says it wants all 2.3 million votes cast in Florida and Michigan to be counted, and that it expects the Rules Committee to allocate pledged delegates based on the popular vote, and that the full delegation shall be seated. If that doesn't happen, the Clinton campaign appears open to appealing the decision to the Credentials Committee, which would send the argument all the way to the convention in August.
Technically, you can go into the Credentials Committee, but we fully expect and have every hope and every expectation that these issues will be resolved on Friday.
On Saturday.
Saturday.
Resolved in our favor.
Well, if it's not resolved in your favor, do you appeal? I mean, that's the signal you've been sending so far.
So that's a bridge to cross when we come to that particular stream.
Let's turn now to NBC News and MSNBC political director Chuck Todd. Good evening, Chuck.
Good evening, Keith. It was nice that you shared those conference calls. That's what our days are normally like around here.
It's like only there's 17 of them and they last an hour apiece. What do you think of my contrarian thinking here, that if the Rules Committee can't or won't do what Senator Clinton wants on Saturday, that's the best thing that could happen to her?
Well, what she would need, it's funny you say that, in order to pull that off, she would need to find a majority in that Rules Committee that would be willing to do nothing. And the problem she has is even folks that have endorsed her, and we've all studied this Rules Committee, and we know that there are more public Clinton-endorsed supporters on that Rules Committee than Obama supporters, though we think privately Obama actually has a slight advantage. They just can't get a majority of that committee to agree that doing nothing is a good idea on Saturday.
So if Senator Clinton does take it then all the way to the convention, if it winds up not being to her liking, is it going to make any difference to the nomination? Would Obama be far enough ahead by that point to seat the delegations to the Clinton specifications and still Obama becomes the nominee?
I think that's very likely. And when you look at the numbers, the thing that I think that the Clinton campaign knows and that they could be bracing for, let's say to go with your contrarian view, that the Rules Committee does nothing. Obama gets his 2026, hits that first magic number that we've all thought was the magic number for some time on Tuesday after the voting polls close in Montana. You will then get a flood of new people that come over and endorse him. If she then threatens to say, I'm thinking about petitioning the Credentials Committee, you will see enough superdelegates come to his side to make it so that the numbers are a moot point.
The DNC chair, Governor Dean, said in April that he expected one of the candidates to leave the race after the 3rd of June, after the final primaries. But does he actually have the pull to make that happen, or is there the real possibility here that it's going to stay at least technically, literally unresolved until August?
He doesn't have that pull, but what would is a group of people. It would be a collective group of, I'd argue, 3 people: Al Gore, Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, who have all 3 rallied behind Obama and said, we're with Obama, he's the nominee. Then Senator Clinton wouldn't have much standing. Howard Dean is not the old-fashioned DNC chair power broker that could pull that off. A troika led by Al Gore, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid could.
Are we at this kind of strange stage where what Senator Clinton's supporters have always alleged may actually be coming true here, that the media actually has influence in what happens now regarding the nomination? Because you've got the meeting on Saturday, you've got the Puerto Rico primary on Sunday, you've got Montana and South Dakota on Tuesday, and then nothing, flatline, no votes, no primaries, no caucuses, nothing off which to hang the idea of the story that there is still a race to cover. And what happens to Senator Clinton if nobody covers her, metaphorically speaking, after Tuesday?
Right. Well, we're seeing a little bit of that this week. I mean, look, one of the unintended consequences of this McClellan bombshell here in Washington is that it pushed down this story that we're talking about today. Florida and Michigan is not the lead political story right now in Washington or, frankly, the country. That's a problem already for Senator Clinton. And as you say, what happens when it's clear that Obama appears to be the presumptive nominee, that there really isn't much she can do? He starts acting more and more like the nominee, engages McCain more, and then it becomes very difficult. Look, her campaign realizes this. Don't forget, Terry McAuliffe, the chair of the campaign, said about a month ago, one of the endless Tuesday nights that we usually get together, that this thing is going to end in June. There will be a nominee in June. He, I believe, put an end date of June 15th. So at this point, I think we look at June 15th as a likely end date.
Yeah, it might be the next time the senator gets covered after Tuesday. We'll find out. Chuck Todd, political director for NBC News and MSNBC. As always, Chuck, many thanks.
You got it, Keith.